Welcome back to Jacques in the Garden. Today I wanted to show you guys 3 different kales that I'm growing in my garden and how I use them. So today we're gonna start with this one here. This has a couple different names that you commonly see. Normally it's called Dino Kale or Lacinato Kale. It's very typical to find this in the grocery store. And a lot of people might think that they don't really like kale as much as they think they do. But it turns out if you grow your own kale, just like almost anything, it tastes a lot better. Most of the kale that you find in the store tends to be more bitter because it's grown in hot areas like Central California. As kale experiences warmth, it produces more bitterness. And actually winter-grown kale will even be sweet. So keep that in mind in your garden. You definitely want to devote some space to kale for the winter. Now, the Lacinato kale here, the way it works is that it produces these thicker stems, and then the leaves themselves kind of wrinkle out from the stem. And you get leaf all the way down to the base. So these are really great for actually anything. You could use this kind of kale for salads, sautés, braises, soups. Our personal preference for this kale is for salad and or for a sauté in the pan. Really quick, just give it some heat until it breaks down, and it's just wonderful. It holds up texture better than some of the other kales. The biggest issue that you'll tend to have with them is aphids and cabbage moths. And the cabbage moths will create those little caterpillars and they'll eat up your leaves and you'll find little green poops all over the place. So in terms of care, you want to make sure that they don't experience that much late afternoon sun and they get plenty of water. That's going to be your best bet for a healthy kale plant. As you can see here, that this is actually up at my eye level. So this plant itself, it's approaching 6 feet. And the reason why it does that is because it's just had no significant stresses, so it hasn't actually bolted yet. So this plant is now coming on 2 years. By now, it actually will probably flower because kale is biennial, which means that it flowers on the 2nd year. So once it does that, you could cut off the base and you'll actually get growth beneath it. And you can actually see that right here, this one's already started growing on the bottom. So if I wanted to, I could cut this off and that'll just keep going. But let's go take a look at some of the other kales. Over here in this part of my garden, I actually have my red Russian kale. So that's this guy right here. And there's a really nice thing about red Russian kale is that it produces these very tender leaves. So if you were to look at a red Russian leaf and you feel it, it's actually much more supple, it's thinner, and it doesn't have that almost waxy, thick coating that like the Lacinato does. So something like this is, again, you could use almost any of these kales for anything, but our personal preference for red Russian is actually for salads. It has such a nice tender leaf that it produces these wonderful salads that's actually pleasant to eat. It's not very fibrous, it's not very tough, and it has some sweetness to it. It's very similar to any other kale. It likes a lot of water. It actually does want a little more sun. I've noticed that over here on this backside, you could see that the kale plants are looking very kind of small and not really that healthy. And that's mostly because this asparagus has been crowding over it and actually shading it. And then this plant has reached out into the sun and it looks wonderful. So in general, I think we want to provide them a little more sun than I'm providing them now, but you'll see that they produce prolifically. Like this thing is absolutely loaded in leaves. And as they get older, they will start to become a little more tough. So for example, right here, you could see that it's starting to have these little spots on it. And that's just what happens as it ages. You could still use this, but it's not as nice as these young leaves like this one right here. Actually, one quick thing to mention before we move on to the next kale is that if you see your kale flowering, which this one was, you can just pinch off that flower stalk. And what you'll get is more branching from the sides. So that's what's going on here. You see it has a lot of these little offshoots. When I saw the flower, I simply removed it. I think it flowered because I wasn't giving it enough water. So stressed plants will flower earlier, but traditionally kale should flower on the 2nd year. So let's go take a look at another kale variety that we love using in soups and for kale chips. Over here at the end of my tomato raised bed are my 3 curly kale plants. So this is the 3rd kale that I wanted to talk about. This is a kale that is on the tougher side. So between the first 2, if I had to rate them, red Russian would be the most tender, Lacinato would be 2nd, and then the curly kale will be the toughest, so the more fibrous kind. But it's really, really wonderful for use in things like soups where you cook it for a long time, cooked with beans, it's really fantastic, it becomes more tender, and kale chips. This is a perfect variety for making kale chips. It just does really well when you bake it in the oven. It's got a ton of surface area. Each one of these leaves is just all surface area, which makes it great for holding things like seasonings. So if you're making your kale chips, you could really load this up with flavor because there's a lot of area that it could actually grab onto. I have to admit, this is the best version of this kale that I've ever had growing here. And I'll talk about why that is. These are now coming into 2 years old. So they look really great. And you'll notice that this one's really tall and these other two are a lot shorter. And that's because this one has been topped. So what I did is I just got a little quick saw and I literally chopped the top off right here. The reason why I did it at this height is that I wanted it to be above the raised bed so that it did get some of that morning sun that this blade would otherwise block. And now this is actually a single plant that's emerged out of the main stalk and is now producing this wonderful kale. So that's something you could do with kale. You could actually keep kale going probably 3-5 years. Again, this is on the second year and this one hasn't even flowered. The reason why you would want to do something like this is because rather than starting from a new plant that has a very shallow, small root system, these plants have been in the ground now for 2 years, which means that their roots are probably extending multiple feet down and they're quite spread out. So now these have easy access to nutrients, to water. They're going to make much bigger leaves throughout the year and they're going to probably be healthier and look more vigorous. So that's one reason you would want to do this. In this case, they're actually all being watered off of a single oya. So this is a small oya here. And what that does is it passively sort of lets water infiltrate the soil around these plants. And then these roots will now gravitate to that and get all their water from there. So this has become a very resilient system of 3 kale plants that are producing an absolute abundance of kale. So curly kale, great for soup, great for kale chips. But let's wait for the sun to come down a little bit and we'll do a little harvest in the afternoon and make a kale salad. The first step to making a kale salad, of course, is to collect some kale. So I have kale plants in 2 different areas. I'm going to start here. I'm using my Felco 321 snips. I really like these guys because the blades themselves are very short. So it's really easy to get inside a bushy plant like this, make a lot of cuts without really having any chance of sort of cutting off the wrong thing, which I think anyone who's gardened for some time can say that they've definitely cut off something they didn't want to cut off. So having the nice little blade is really handy. So let's grab some leaves here. I'm gonna get a pretty decent amount. When you're making a kale salad, a lot of it kind of shrivels down. So you wanna get more than you think you need. So I'm gonna clean up a little bit more here and I'll probably do some pruning on these kind of uglier leaves that are just not that healthy. I'm gonna go ahead and leave these here. And then let's go over to the second location and get a little bit more kale. An important thing to mention when harvesting any leafy green, especially kale, is to make sure that you're harvesting it early in the morning or at least in the evening. So right now it's the evening, and the idea behind that is that you basically just don't want your kale to be wilting when you're harvesting it. It's not going to taste as good. Some of that moisture is going to be pulled out of the leaves. Like right now they feel really tender, cool. They're going to just taste a lot better. So let's grab a bushel of kale here and then we'll process it by cleaning it up and make a quick salad. Before we do anything else, of course, we have to clean our kale. So let me just make a quick little pitch to building yourself an outdoor sink. I'm gonna use as much water as I need because there's a bucket under here collecting all the water running down, and then I can take that water and water my garden. I'm gonna go ahead and start rinsing. I wanna make sure that, especially with a curly kind of kale like this, where it's all ruffly, that you flip to the back side and make sure you give it a good clean, because that's where anything will be hiding if like there's aphids or something like that. The other thing you could do is get a nice clean bucket, fill with water, shove your kale in there and just kind of mess it all around in that water. But I don't have a clean bucket right now, so I'm gonna use the sink and then we'll move on to the next steps. Next thing to do is to just de-stem your kale. Just grab your leaf, put your fingers along the stem and pull it back. That'll get pretty much all of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this and we'll chop it up and make a dressing. Once you have a good stack, it's a good idea to just come in, roughly cut it into whatever size chunks you want. I'm gonna basically quarter this pile and then come across the long side and probably cut it in like 6 rows. Looking for pieces like that. You could also just do narrow strips. Doesn't really matter. Either way, it's gonna taste great. Now that the kale's prepped, let's make a little dressing. There's not gonna really be any recipe here. It's gonna just be sort of Asian themed. It's gonna be a mix of rice vinegar, some sesame oil, a nice light, delicious soy sauce, and I might throw in a little ponzu to give it a little extra flavor. And then I'll do some sesame seeds to kind of garnish it and also add some texture and a little squeeze of lemon juice for that acid. So I'm gonna just kind of totally freestyle this and then just adjust it by taste. Start with a tablespoon of vinegar. Let's double everything I've done so far because it's a pretty significant batch of kale. So there's 2 tablespoons of soy. Do another tablespoon of that vinegar. come in with a tablespoon and a half-ish of sesame oil. Maybe just a splash of ponzu, and then some lemon, and some homegrown garlic. So we're gonna just mince this up. I'm gonna just really chop it up quite finely. So we're not gonna use any salt here, of course, because we got the soy sauce. Before we throw it on our kale, let's do a little taste test. It's always gonna need some adjustment. It's actually pretty nice. I wanna get a little more vinegar, but I'm gonna do a sweet vinegar now. Ooh, that's good. A little more lemon. Okay, that's good. So what we're gonna do, this is actually a pretty important step. Whenever you're making a kale salad, you don't wanna just eat it raw straight up right away. It has a lot of alkaloids that could be hard to digest. A lot of people don't like that. So what you wanna do is get your dressing on there. You're gonna wanna massage it. When I say massage, I mean be pretty rough. So you actually wanna get in there with your hands and really work the dressing into the kale. This is gonna do a couple different things for you. It's going to soften the kale even further, so it becomes a much nicer texture. The other thing it's going to do is help break down those alkaloids, because we have the vinegars, we have the lemon juice, and that's really what you need to help process that kale a little bit. The other thing with a salad like this is you could just throw on things like toasted almonds, sliced cucumber, sliced tomato fresh from the garden, and there are a couple out there that have my name on it, so we might go out there and boost the salad up a little bit. What we're gonna do now, let it sit in the fridge for like half an hour before you eat it. So let's wait and we'll come back and do a little taste. While that kale is marinating, let's go ahead and pop in and grab some cucumbers. This is the Boothby Blonde right here. And over here we got the Tasty Green, which is the one that I'm looking for. All right, so we got our cucumber. Salad's looking real nice. So let's just go ahead and slice this up and then I'll give it a little taste test. Last thing is some sesame seeds. Again, texture, a little bit of flavor. That's why we also put the cucumber, because when you have a salad, it's just way more fun if you have some texture in there. All right, let's give it a taste. Man, tell you what guys, if you haven't made salad from the kale that you grow in your garden, you don't really know what kale is. I'm not trying to be rude. Kale you buy in the store simply just doesn't compete. This is tender, has a little bit of sweetness, there's no bitterness, none of that scary kale flavor a lot of people think they hate. So please, try cooking with some kale, try growing new varieties, guys. It is so worth it, especially through the winter. That's it for today though. I got a lot of salad to eat. I'm gonna go enjoy it in the garden. I'll catch you guys next time.